Hello. The time is now 4:30. We'll go ahead and call this work session to order. First item of business is a barge design presentation. I don't have my agenda right in front of me, but we have Director Johnson to tell us to make the introduction.
Yes, thank you very much. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Before I make the introductions to the barge team and the presentation, I want to give a little bit of background information on how we got to this evening's presentation as a whole. So it was apparent the City of Red Bank is committed to supporting a healthier community, as evident by resolution number 23-1665, which was passed to support the CDC's nationwide Active People Healthy Nation initiative. Also, resolution 23-1601 was to adopt the Red Bank Community Mobility Plan and further support their recommendations out of that endeavor. And resolution 24-1702 was our formal resolution that accepted a $50,000 grant fund from the Tennessee Department of Health, their Healthy Built Environment grant for a right-sizing feasibility study of Dayton Boulevard. First, let me acknowledge Ms. Kelly Ware. She is here this evening. She is the Healthy Development Coordinator with the Tennessee Department of Health, and she has provided grant assistance and some guidance along the way, from even making us aware of the grant opportunity, making sure that we had our ducks in a row, and we were successful in implementing this grant. So with that, I'm going to introduce Mr. Matt Stovall. He is the Senior Vice President and Client Service Leader for Barge Design, and he will introduce the rest of his team.
Thank you.
Thank you, Liz.
Welcome.
Okay. Thank y'all for the opportunity to be here today. I just wanted to thank the mayor and council for the opportunity to work with the City of Red Bank. Y'all are a very important client to us, and we appreciate all the work that we've done. I've got with me today Geneva Daly. She is one of our transportation experts. She was very involved with the development of this study, and we'll let her go through and explain it to you. But thank you for everything.
Hi, good evening. Thanks for letting us come in with you guys. So, like Leslie said, we've been helping the city out with this Dayton Boulevard right sizing study. That's what we're calling it, which was funded in part by the Tennessee Department of Health Healthy Built Environment grant. Just a little bit about that grant. The city was awarded $50,000 to complete a right sizing feasibility study for Dayton Boulevard. So what that grant covers is really promoting health equity by providing increased activity for local residents, both in physical and mental health. So the built environment essentially being pedestrian and bicycle infrastructure. So our project, we studied Dayton Boulevard from Signal Mountain Road to Gab Road, so essentially through your entire city limits, approximately 5 miles. Our goals were to analyze existing traffic conditions, understand how traffic is operating out there today, determine if there are any improvements that can be made to make the traffic operations more efficient, and then ultimately to establish what the lane configuration should be along Dayton to promote the best use of alternative transportation modes, including vehicle, pedestrian, and bicycle. Overall, just to improve the quality of the corridor, the viability of the corridor for all users, and then hopefully provide some opportunities for beautification, for landscaping, things like that. So how do we do this? Our methodology, we follow TDOT's Road Diet Guidance Manual, set forth by TDOT. Some of those steps involved in that process included investigating existing traffic conditions, like I shared. We applied their analysis process to look at both how traffic is operating right now and how it will operate in the future. So when you apply, and if you do apply some of these changes, that it is future-proof in that way. We analyzed existing crash trends along the corridor, really focusing on pedestrian and bicyclists, or what we call vulnerable users. And then we did a literature review of the city's existing plans and studies, just to make sure that what we were analyzing for the corridor aligned with what the city's visions and goals and objectives were. So we did our analysis. We took a look at everything. We collected the data that we needed. And we came up with some findings. So our existing conditions findings is what we're calling them. We noticed a couple things. First of which, there are 2 segments along Dayton that do have crash rates that exceed the statewide average crash rate. Statewide average being TDOT has some data from around the state that looks at, okay, corridors and facilities of matching cross-section or geometric layout. What is typically the crash rate on those corridors? And then you can compare certain corridors with those crash rates to see, are you above average, or are there anomalies with certain parts of certain roadways? Those segments being Morrison Springs to Ashland Terrace, and then a small segment down by Signal Mountain Road and Hedgewood Drive there. Another thing that we observed was the traffic signal timings operate more individually along the corridor as opposed to what we would call in coordination, so kind of in sync together. And what you'll see with that is they kind of have a mind of their own when they're operating individually versus if they operate as a system, they can kind of flow better together and really move traffic in a more efficient manner. And then lastly, we did note there were some sidewalk gaps for pedestrian connectivity, mostly along the north side of the corridor. So from Gad Road, essentially down to Browntown. I know there's a new development that filled in a little bit of that section. And then there's a small piece down there by Spring Street and Signal Mountain Road as well. And then there were some mid-block crossings. Some of them were spaced far apart. Aerially, it doesn't look that way, but when you're a pedestrian walking the corridor, those steps can really add up. So these are just things for us to note as we looked into future projections of the corridor, what recommendations were going to be made, just anything that we needed to keep an eye on for. So as we did our analysis, we looked at all the projections, we looked at what the changes could be, should be, and we did determine that the study found it was feasible to reconfigure Dayton Boulevard from the 5-lane section to the 3-lane section for vehicle travel way. So that image there on the left, I don't know if the laser's gonna work on that screen there, but the image there on the left shows what the existing cross section is on Dayton Boulevard. So a lot of pavement, a lot of room for vehicles. And that image there on the right is essentially what could be the cross section for Dayton Boulevard. So you'll notice you still maintain your travel ways north and south for your vehicles, and you still maintain your center turn lane, which will be crucial for turning vehicles in and out of all the businesses. But now you would essentially have a full vehicle lane width on either side of Dayton Boulevard that you can use for separated bike lanes, screenscaping, things like that.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
So your summary findings say it is feasible to reconfigure Dayton Boulevard from a 5-lane roadway to a 3-lane roadway. Now that feasibility, that takes into account current traffic counts, even peak hours,
Yes, ma'am.
and our current right-of-way.
It does, yes.
Thank you.
So, and I'm gonna get into just a little bit of that. I'm doing a high-level glaze over out of respect for your all's time. I know you have a lot to go over this evening. But if there's any details you want to see, if you want to read the full report, I will geek out over all the numbers with you. So just, I think Leslie was going to yield questions. If you want to direct them to her email, if we run out of time, we can get with you to answer those questions. So with that cross section, kind of hinting on a little bit what you noted, there are going to be some crucial recommendations that go with the restriping of the corridor there, and the reconfiguration of those lanes. The first one being that signal timing. So again, with those signal timers operating individually, it's a little bit less efficient. So when you make a change that is this broad on a corridor, it really is a great idea to time those signals together. It just means that there's going to be less stop and go for those cars as they travel down the corridor. They're going to move more efficiently, and you're just going to flush your traffic better. You will really see that in your commuting hours. In your morning commuting hours, everybody is going south, and then vice versa in the evening. That's where you can really tell a big difference. Along with that, we would recommend a speed limit reduction on Dayton Boulevard. I know it's 40 miles an hour right now. I drove it coming here, and I tried to drive 40 the whole way. It's hard. you want to speed. So there are.
Get a ticket.
I know. I was like, don't let me get a ticket on the way here. So there are some federal standards that support reducing the speed limit to 35 miles an hour, especially for a cross section like this. It's just safer for all users. You have more time to stop as a vehicle when you see a conflict with a pedestrian or bicyclist. Just creates a more welcoming environment for those users. And overall, it will just fit better holistically with the corridor. So pros and cons, we did want to share, what the trade-offs will be for a project like this, especially a project this size. A lot of good things can come from a transformation like this. Really, the corridor, it will change the functionality of that corridor from what would feel like a high-speed roadway or highway to really what would feel like Main Street. A much more livable, viable, lively corridor, largely because of the more equitable share of mobility for all users. With that, you're going to provide stronger connections. I know that's been outlined in several literature pieces for the city. Just being able to connect both sides of Red Bank a lot better and to the north and south, especially for bicyclists. And it does align, again, with the city's goals and what their citizens and stakeholders have shared what they wanted for Dayton Boulevard. With that, there are trade-offs. Again, you are sharing that space. You are reallocating space that was once for vehicles to other users. So with that, the priority will shift less from vehicles and more to other types of mobility. You will see a little bit longer queues. Nothing that the study determined was unfeasible, but just longer queues. When you have one lane of cars versus 2 lanes, there's going to be more cars in that one lane. And there will be a little bit longer wait, mostly on the side streets, just for them to access Dayton Boulevard. A lot of that can be sorted out through the signal retiming, but on average, maybe 30 to 40 seconds is what the study showed for longer wait time on the side streets. So throughout the project, there were a couple of critical parts of the project, critical intersections that we looked at. This was one of them. So from Morrison Springs and Ashland Terrace, I know we're all familiar with this segment here. This segment is actually probably going to look closest to what it looks like now in terms of laneage. It's just a bottleneck there. There's so much left turning traffic coming off Morrison Springs and coming off Ashland Terrace. They're both trying to get back and forth, that it's really hard to take away a lane there. It would just make things really unfeasible for vehicles and create more problems for you. So this is just a snippet of a concept plan. So with this study, we did some concept layouts. It's not full design, just concept of what it could look like on the corridor. So this is just a visual image for you to see. Some of this laneage is probably going to be pretty similar to what you see out there now. This would be a section where bicyclists likely would share a travel lane with the vehicle traffic. And if this project were to go to design, your designer would figure out how to best transition that and make it, a safe transition for those users. But just something to keep in mind. There are some other studies happening that we've helped Leslie with in separate projects that have looked at these individual intersections themselves for improvements, just because there's a lot of unique features and things happening there. And I know there's been some accidents at Morrison Springs that we're helping to mitigate. So these are included in the report. If you want to flip through them, you can see the whole corridor and how it lays out. Again, they're not full design, but they're conceptual layouts, so they can provide you a pretty good starting point for what Dayton could look like. So next steps. So we ran our analysis. We determined the feasibility of the corridor, that the study determined that this could work, this could be successful. So for you all, what does that mean? You can use the feasibility study for future funding opportunities. We see a lot of cities do that once they have a planning document. They can really show that, hey, we have skin in the game. Can you help us design this? And there are funding opportunities out there that will cover these types of projects. So you can start design. You can use this study kind of as a basis for that. Again, some of those finer details can be sorted out in the design process, including the greenscaping aspect. So this cross section here, this is the image I showed earlier. That bioretention strip really has a lot of opportunity to create not only just visual beautification aspects, but stormwater management. So I know that there have been some projects that are looking at Stringer's Branch through there. This can help with some of that mitigation for stormwater. Those images on the left here, there are just a couple different examples of what those concrete medians can be. They can be low vegetation, they can be trees, they can be, mulch landscaping. It really has a kind of a multifaceted benefit there because it creates a little bit more of a cushion, not only for noise and just vertical separation for bicyclists and pedestrians too. It makes them feel a little bit safer walking out there. Again, beautification, water drainage, all those things. That was a lot, and I went really high level, and I skipped over a lot of detail. But again, if you have questions, I can yield them now, or I don't know how we are on time, Leslie.
I think if something's pressing, ask it, otherwise we'll collect it later and make sure you provided information.
Quick one here. So I live very close to Morrison Springs and Dayton, and deliberately rode my bike here to remind myself of how unpleasant that can be. I love riding my bike, but not necessarily on that stretch of Dayton. The slip lane is a major culprit there. Has there been any consideration of getting rid of that or addressing that as a problem?
Yeah, so certainly. So yes, there are options. In summary, there are options there. Removing the slip lane will certainly help pedestrians and bicyclists because the slip lane does encourage the high speeds. It would definitely have an impact on your traffic there. It would be something that once you get into the design phase would need to be looked at a little bit more closely. Just because what you don't want to happen is for vehicles to queue so far back that now you're obstructing Ashland Terrace. Really what I think could be a good kind of compromise of the two is have some sort of bike lane that transitions where the bicyclists are out of that conflict area, where people are then merging at a high rate of speed to get onto Morrison Springs and to get onto 27. So there's ways you can do that early in the process where you have bicyclists that are established in the lane before that conflict happens. You're basically separating those conflicts out. So whether you choose to remove the slip lane or keep it in there for traffic purposes, there's ways you can do that and incorporate both users. I don't know if that answers your question or not.
I think so. I can save it for another time.
I do have a question. I see on this critical intersections that you have a bit of a reconfiguration there for Ashland Terrace, but I don't see any reconfiguration for Morrison Springs. Was that outside the scope of this study?
In terms of like the approach laneage there.
Mhm. Like I see Ashland Terrace being reduced to one lane eastbound, for example, but I don't see any changes. There's no changes proposed to Morrison Springs in this diagram. Leslie?
Yeah, it really was outside the scope of this particular project, but it does roll over into some safety, intersection safety studies that we've done, which does incorporate Morrison Springs and Dayton, as well as some other studies with Ashland Terrace and Dayton. So combining all three of these revealing studies, then we will definitely come back and propose some improvements for the commission to make a better decision on. So yeah, but the scope of this project was simply the study is right sizing feasible for Dayton Boulevard.
Mm-hmm.
And that did include, the movements entering Dayton Boulevard. to answer your question. So we did, like Leslie said, we looked much closer at Morrison Springs on a separate project, but in terms of the laneage approaching Dayton Boulevard, there was nothing that needed to change there. So we couldn't really get rid of those left turn lanes. We looked at what that would take feasibility wise, and it just was not realistic.
I got one more. Just quick vehicle count question. Do you know if the vehicle count for Dayton Boulevard on going north-south was higher or lower than east-west from Ashland to Morrison?
That's a great question.
I can actually answer that.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
It's significantly higher east-west.
Okay.
I was astonished. And that came from the work that, actually Barge is doing, under Public Works, looking at this, really from Dayton Boulevard up to the top of Crestview and in that school zone. And if I recall correctly, I think it's about 18,000 daily, east-west, and about 11 or 12,000 daily north-south. So it's significantly higher at navigating that slip lane.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
'Cause I just wonder if knowing that would significantly impact the approach to designing there. I mean,
Certainly a factor we have to take into it. And Leslie mentioned to it, but there's really 3 studies going on here. This Dayton Boulevard, which was the run of Dayton Boulevard, then the school zone upslope on Ashland Terrace, and then also our local traffic safety committee that the chief chairs, the Chief of Police Dan Seymour, is really looking at the whole east-west dimension from the western edge of the school zone down there by Mountain Creek all the way up. Barge is a key player in some of that, and some other consultants and entities are participating. And we're, the city manager, I'm really relying on Director Tate and Director Johnson to synthesize all of these into a coherent proposal that comes before the commission.
We're looking at it from a holistic approach, taking all of this data into consideration when something is presented back for consideration of further action. So having a lot of studies that are telling us different things at different times for different purposes has been very revealing. We made some assumptions that we thought we knew, but these studies are telling us, just as Martin pointed out, the volume of that traffic that is really happening. So all of these documents will come into play when we present something back for additional action.
And I'll have those two, the Ashland Terrace and the Morrison Springs intersection. I'll be bringing those to the commission probably in May after we kind of get through the budget process. Because some of that work will play into the budget for next year.
I had a question. I'm sorry, Jean, just really quick. Was curious about whether or not any of the data that you all were looking at would indicate a need to remove any of our current existing traffic signals? Or if that's like a totally different area?
So we did not determine any of that in our
Okay.
study.
Okay.
Trying to think off the top of my head, I didn't see any that stood out to me.
I'm always thinking of Martin Road particularly. That one seems, just in my anecdotal experience driving up and down Dayton Boulevard, kind of unnecessary at this point in time, but I, just didn't know if that was considered in any of the data you all were looking at.
May I add to that, Mayor? Potentially Browntown and Wickley would be better if it was a traffic circle, and potentially adding a traffic circle at Ashmore, the south end. I'm thinking as you come into Red Bank, the first thing you do is you hit a traffic circle and you kind of drop out of warp. I think there's lots of potential for traffic circles as we synthesize all this report and then match it up with our broader, mission and vision and goals. And I think absolutely, I'd be surprised if there isn't a traffic circle at some point in time where it makes sense on Dayton Boulevard.
In place of an existing traffic signal? Is that what you're
Or
saying?
in addition to just control, like at Ashmore at the south end, where you come out of the tunnel. To me, and I'm not an engineer, but to me, that seems like a place
You
where
are
you
actually.
Thank you. Actually, I'm a civil engineer, but that's not the name. Yeah, I think we should take a look at applying roundabouts in Red Bank for sure.
Sure.
You could
Jamie?
absolutely do that. I mean,
Okay.
it is a traffic calming measure too.
Yeah.
So it does slow people down.
With all the combination of the studies, will it then be prioritized by the studies, or does commission take note of that, or how the grant monies are applied? Yes and yes. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
And again, these are gonna be strategic measures.
Sure. Okay.
There's no way, nothing's gonna happen all in one swoop. So it'll be determination based on prioritization, where do we potentially start?
Yeah.
And then how does that design look? And each segment has the potential to be uniquely different than the other based on the current conditions, what we're hoping to create and traffic patterns. So
If it were there and then go out, or start at GAD and work its way down.
Yeah.
So the city can, they can do, you can divide out however you want. This study just more or less serves as a starting blueprint for you on, hey, this is for what we've studied. This is the path that we can pursue to actually implementing some of this. How you choose to implement it, it's up to you.
And yes, grant funding will definitely rank up there on helping us with prioritizing where we start.
Thank you.
One of your recommendations was that our intersections will need to be synchronized. The signals will need to be synchronized. Now, do I recall correctly, staff, our signals are not currently capable of that kind of high-level synchronization as they stand today?
I wouldn't say 100%, but I think Mr. Tate can probably answer that
I
question.
wouldn't say 100%, but they would definitely require some modifications.
I recall a discussion about synchronizing traffic signals in the past, and that it might require considerable upgrades.
Some of them would, some of them are just standard traffic loops with no other
Smart.
connectivity.
Yeah.
And then some could be retrofit, so that they could be synchronized.
But especially ones low grade like Martin Road and Browntown and Wickley that we're talking about, they're probably some of the simple ones. So we're talking about at least some investment involved in getting them up to a capability for that.
And those cost estimates would go into consideration when we look at design as well.
Well, my consideration is that if those were converted to roundabouts, or if signals were eliminated, then that cost would go away, because you don't need to synchronize a roundabout because traffic flows continuously. And also signals require continued maintenance and upkeep and upgrades over time. So there would be an initial investment for the conversion itself of the intersection, but we might gather a long-term savings between not having to upgrade the signal and not having to maintain a signal over time, if we were to make that change. Thank you.
Any other questions? Nope. Okay.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for being here, both of you, with us today. And if we have any other questions, or the community has any other questions, feel free to send them to us or to Director Johnson, and we will forward those on to the appropriate person.
Absolutely.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Our next agenda item is our financial update from our CFO, Ms. Pickle.
Good evening, Commissioners.
Good evening.
I'm not used to missing the microphone up here, so hopefully you guys can hear me. Do you guys have this?
Maybe speak up a little bit. I'm
You guys
having
have
you,
this in your,
Yes, it's in the packet.
it's in the packet. Yes.
so on page 1, that is the revenues for the general fund. If you look at the bottom line, we're at 85% for the year, and as far as the budget year goes, we're at 75% of the year. So we're at 85%, so collectively speaking, the general fund is up about 10% of what we expected to be at this time of year. So that's good news. And on page 2 is the expenditures at the top for the general fund. Again, we're at 75% of the budget year, and the expenditures are at 73%. So they're just a tick below where we expected them to be. So that's also good news. And all the other funds are operating as expected for this time of year as well. It looks like mostly, for the most part, the revenues are up above where we expected them to be. And then the expenditures are lower than we expected them to be. So no big issues, no big surprises for this month as we sail into the budget time of year. Do you guys have any questions?
You said that our expenditures are below what was anticipated. Should we be concerned about any under execution there, or is this
No,
just
it's
things are
at
gonna roll over?
73% and we're at 75% of the year, so it's
Awesome.
just
Great.
a tickle.
Okay.
Not very
Not
much.
way below, just a little.
Right.
Okay,
Yeah.
great.
Hopefully we can hit the nail right on the head by the end of the year, so that's what we expect.
Great.
Any other questions?
Any other questions? Nope. All right. Thank you, Ms. Tickle.
Thank you.
All right. And now is the glorious time to dive into our Budget Workshop 101 with Mr. Grannon. We are kicking off budget season tonight. Thank you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Mayor and Vice Mayor and Commissioners, and it really is, I'm just astonished. This is the beginning of my fourth budget process, and it's an honor and privilege to be before you in this capacity. So I'll orient you to a few things. First of all, I recognize my colleagues, CFO Chris Pickle and Director of Administration and Finance Tracy Berry. I'm up here speaking, but really all the continuity of the budget process is the three of us working collaboratively. Maybe I drive Chris and Tracy crazy, but so orient you to a couple of things. I did revise the memo and I emailed it and it's posted on our website, and I placed a hard copy at the dais for you. Nothing changed about the dates and times, but I did slide to the next Tuesday, the presentation of the city manager's budget estimate. And then these slides, I printed out a hard copy for each of you in case you wanted to make some notes. And then lastly, I placed at the dais a hard copy of the actual current year's budget, the packet that we built this time last year for the FY25 budget. And if you'll have that handy, I'll start going through my slides and then we'll refer back to the printed budget. And for those viewing at home, this product is available on our website, and I'll lead you to that here in just 1 second. Okay, we got a lot to cover. Review the budget dates for FY26, review the FY25 budget package, which is the current year's budget, review how to calculate residential property taxes, talk about this being a reappraisal year, review the mission, vision, and goals. I never want to miss an opportunity to do that, and review the budget adoption process. And lastly, a few wrap-up slides. And I'm speaking loud because we don't have a microphone here, so I'm trying to make it so our viewers online and YouTube can hear me. Sorry if I'm screaming at you. Is it too loud, Mayor?
No.
Okay. Okay, thank you, ma'am. All right, budget dates for FY26, the current year. Tonight, Budget 101. The next 2 Tuesdays are extra commission meeting dates. So just want to make sure everybody knows that. They are 2 budget workshops. Tuesday the 22nd, scheduled at 5 to 7:30. And I will present the city manager's budget estimate, and you will hear from the chief of police, the fire chief, and the court clerk, and we'll have citizen comments. The following Tuesday, the 29th, will be budget workshop 2 of 2, again starting at 5. You'll hear from Public Works, Community Development, and City Hall, and public comments at the end. Then we're done with extra dates, and we revert back to our normal first and third Tuesday commission meetings. Tuesday, the 6th of May, that's a normal commission meeting date, at work session will be an opportunity for the commission to just discuss and open all the things that they have seen and heard and read, and an opportunity for you as a commission to just talk. The following Tuesday, again, a regularly scheduled, this is our 3rd Tuesday in May, is proposed to be the first reading, and that will be a work session and regularly. And if it passes at first reading, it is the proposed budget, has a short lifespan of 2 weeks, and then it comes back at our first Tuesday in June, the 3rd of June, for second reading. And if it's passed on second reading, it becomes the FY26 adopted budget. So that's our timeline.
But the May 6th, excuse me, the May 6th is early.
Yes, thank you. Thank you,
And
Commissioner.
then May 20th and June 3rd will be 5 and 6.
Correct,
Okay, thank you.
correct.
All right.
We don't anticipate a need to be early. Thank you for
Okay.
pointing that out. Tuesday, May 6th is an early start like tonight. Thank you, Commissioner.
Mr. Granum, unrelated side note, volume is good at home, so
Oh, good,
online viewers can hear you well.
good. And here we are, review of the FY '26 budget packet. So that's this document that I handed out to the commissioners. And here's for those at home where you can find it. On our city's website, you go to the Departments tab, then you click on Administration and Finance, then you click on Finance, and then down lower on the page, you'll see Annual Budget Reports, and you click on FY 2025 Approved Budget. And for those digitally, that is a hot link. Whew, once you're there, you'll find this complete packet from the FY 25 budget process. In other words, the packet that we built about this time last year. So for Budget 101, we're just going to actually go through this and remind everybody how the budget is constructed. So I am actually going to read the guide that we produced, and I'm going to ask the commissioners to flip back and forth. So if you'll have your budget, and actually this bottom tab is the spreadsheet itself. It's 24 pages, and we'll flip back and forth through the spreadsheet. Things that you should know about our budget. The date on the top right of the front budget of the budget document is version control. The budget is an evolving document, so it's important to know which version you're looking at. Here in Red Bank, we have adopted the practice of dating the budget on the top right of the first page. The date on the budget I am using in this moment is dated 5/16/24, and that actually is our adopted budget. The FY '25 budget is actually 7 separate budgets, or funds as they are labeled in the document. The general fund, the ARPA, State Street Aid, Solid Waste, Stormwater, Drug Fund, and lastly, Impound Fund. Keep reading for a breakdown of each fund, but first a word on staffing. Staffing level. One of the things the budget does is set our staffing levels. At the top of the first page for each fund is a box that shows the staffing level supported by that fund. The first instance in the FY '25 budget is in the Judicial Fund found on page 5. If you would flip to our page 5 in that spreadsheet. Okay. In the box at the top of page 5, it indicates 2.00. The Judicial Fund pays for 2 staff, the court clerk and the deputy court clerk. It also pays for Judge Houston, but he is a part-time employee and is funded in the part-time line along with our part-time court assistant. The staffing level shown on the top only lists full-time benefited employees of the city. No part-time employees are included in that staffing level number. Rather, they are simply factored into the part-time budget line for each department. If you go through the budget and add up all the staffing level numbers, you will get to a total number of 82 full-time benefited employees of the city of Red Bank across all funds. And that is our current strength today. Operating budget summary, pages 1 and 2. So if you go back to the first and second page of the spreadsheet, that's the operating budget summary. Provide a quick summary of the revenues and expenditures, beginning and ending fund balance for each fund. Each fund summarized on these first 2 pages has much more detail later in the document. So pages 1 and 2 is just a quick glance. So let's get to those details. For each fund, the department associated with each fund and the staffing levels. General fund. Pages 3 through 17 of the budget document comprise the general fund. The general fund is what your property taxes support. The general fund supports all or part of the following departments: court or judicial, the commission itself, finance and administration or city hall, community development, fire, police, and part of public works. Here's where we'll do a little page flipping, and we'll work our way through the document. if you go to page 3 and 4, that lists all the sources of revenue for the general fund. Let me flip to page 3. Okay, general fund revenues. The largest source of revenue is property tax at $5,132,682. The second largest is the local sales tax at $1,780,000. A note, our top local sales tax contributor is our Food City, so shop local. And the third largest is state sales tax at $1,475,476. This state sales tax is shared with cities on a per capita basis. So as the population of Red Bank grows, our allocation of state sales tax grows as well. That's why an accurate census count is so important. Page 5, judicial. As a part of the larger general fund with staffing level of 2. Page 6, legislative. Also a part of the larger fund and general fund and funds the city commission itself. Page 7, finance and administration. You might think of it as City Hall. It's all the internal support staff and functions, HR, IT, city manager, city recorder, payroll, finance, risk management, and more. The staffing level is 6. Page 8 lists all forms of insurance, employee insurance benefits, health, vision, dental, life, also liability, property, cyber, and workers' comp. All is listed on page 8. And it's worth noting it's a big number. It's almost 1.4 million for the various forms of insurance. Page 9 is community development with a staffing level of 3.75. Why a fraction? Good question. The department director is 50% funded out of the stormwater fund, and the office manager only allocates 25% of her time to this department. So the community development department is only paying a portion of their respective personnel costs. 1/2 of one, 1/4 of another, plus 3 fully funded staff, the building official, the community planner, and the office manager. Now, the reason I talked about 2 office managers is the community development office manager really supports the planning, whereas the functionality of the building official is still rooted in iWork, and he is largely supported by Kate in Public Works. So that's why there's a little bit of a crossover there with the 2 office managers supporting those different functions that are housed within community development. Works very good. Page 10 is the fire department with a staffing level of 15 full-time professional firefighters. There are another 27 part-time firefighters funded in the other wages line, plus 6 volunteer firefighters. The Red Bank Fire Department is called a hybrid department due to this unique mix of full-time, part-time, and volunteer. 48 firefighters, all state certified in total. Page 11 is police with a staffing level of 28, 26 of which are sworn officers, and 2 are civilian support staff. Pages 12 through 17 are the general fund portion of Public Works. The staffing level is 13.25 on page 12, plus the way we constructed it for the current year, there's an additional FTE in parks on page 15. That will change this year, but nevertheless, it's 13.25 on that one page and then 1 on the parks page, for a total of 14.25 Public Works staff funded by the general fund. These are the folks in the street division, park division, fleet division, facility maintenance, and the Public Works director. This fund also includes 25% of the office manager, 50% of the Public Works supervisor, the other 50% is in stormwater, and 50% of the engineering tech. The other 50% is in stormwater. That is the end of the general fund portion of the budget document, which again is pages 3 through 17. Now we'll roll forward and look at the other funds that are not property tax funded and not part of the general fund. On page 18, we show the American Rescue Plan Act, or ARPA. These are federal funds allocated to Red Bank during the pandemic and will expire 31 December 2026. These funds cross several fiscal years, and the use of these funds is determined by Resolution 221477, and I have a copy here, and that really is our budget blueprint for the expenditure of those funds. No staff are funded by ARPA. State Street Aid, page 19. These funds are essentially gas taxes collected by the state and earned by cities on a per capita basis. They are generally restricted for use on roads, sidewalks, etc., but can be used for mass transit as well. And indeed, that is where we budget for car to paratransit. The Public Works Department is responsible for all execution of work under State Street Aid. No staff are included in this budget, in this fund. Solid Waste Summary, pages 20 and 21. This fund is largely funded by sanitation fees, not property taxes, for the purposes of running all aspects of our trash and recycling operations. Staffing level is 9.25, including 8 solid waste drivers and a supervisor, 1 recycling attendant, and a quarter of the Public Works office manager. The Public Works Department is responsible for all work funded under solid waste. Stormwater, page 22. The Stormwater Fund takes care of over 4,000 structures that collectively comprise our wet weather conveyances, also known as our stormwater system, spread throughout the city. The Stormwater Fund is a proprietary fund, which means several things. First, it's not part of the general fund and is not funded by property taxes. Second, it is funded by its own revenues, fees, and is expected to be self-sustaining, much like a business. The City of Red Bank operates our stormwater system as a permitted utility with its own revenues and expenses separate from all other funds. The staffing level is 4.75. 3 stormwater specialists, 50% of the community development director, 50% of the public works supervisor, 50% of the engineering tech, and 25% of the public works office manager. The Public Works Department is responsible for all work funded under stormwater. Drug Fund, page 23. The Drug Fund includes revenues from 2 primary sources. The first are funds related to the state, such as court fines related to drug cases, seized drug money, and the sale of seized assets related to drug crimes. The second are funds related to federal funds that are shared with us from the seizure of money, vehicles, homes, and other assets related to drug crimes. Each of these funds has its own requirements regarding how the funds can be spent. Generally, the fund must be used for law enforcement purposes to include drug investigations and covering costs for our drug canine. The police department is responsible for all work funded under the drug fund. No staff positions are included in this fund. Impound Fund on page 24. This fund includes revenues related to vehicle seizures for someone driving on a revoked driver's license that was related to a DUI. The funds can be used to cover costs and expenses associated with these seizures, such as overtime paid to officers attending seizure hearings, towing and storage of vehicles, and helps with the cost of maintaining our impound facility. The police department is responsible for all work funded under the drug fund. No staff positions are included in this fund. That is our overview of the budget or budgets. Preparation began with conversations with department directors last month, and we are now building towards this year's version of this same package. And I will say lastly, we're already starting to populate the new versions of all these documents on our webpage. The next 2 Tuesdays, the budget workshops, you'll have department directors come in here and speak to their vision, but you can already get a peek of what they're going to say. 4 of the 6 departments already have their director or chief's message available on the website. And the other 2 are on my desk, so I'm the long pole in the tent there. All right, how to calculate your residential property tax. This is a question that's important to every resident. And so here is how you do it. You find your assessed value. And the way I do it is I go to Hamilton County GIS. And really, if you just Google Hamilton County GIS, you'll see the viewer will come up. You click on that, and up pops a map of the whole county. And then you just zoom in, zoom in, zoom in to get to your property, and you print the report. And it will tell you your total value and your assessed value. And my house already has updated. My value went up 59.6%. So I suppose most everybody around town is experiencing something similar to that, but we'll get to that when we talk about our reappraisal. So you go to GIS and find your assessed value, and I emphasize assessed value. They will tell you your total value, but that's not what you're after. You're after the assessed value. You divide that by 100, then you multiply it by the property tax rate. And so here's an example for a house on Hunter Trail, not the mayor's house. It might be her neighbor's house. Total value is listed at $236,100. These figures are from last year. The assessed value was listed at $59,025. Divide $59,025 by 100, and you get $590.25. You multiply that by the levy of 1.67, and you get to my property taxes. That person's property taxes of $985.72. And I will also add that is property taxes for Red Bank. So there are Hamilton County property taxes as well. This website is absolutely spectacular. I commend this to everybody. This is a hyperlink if you're seeing this digitally. This is the Comptroller of the State of Tennessee's website. You can find a wealth of information on all counties. So go and drill down and get Hamilton County. And then you'll see all the other cities around us. You'll see what the county is charging. You'll see your total property tax levy. This is really a great site. So Hamilton County GIS and the Comptroller site. Okay, we're in a reappraisal year. So what does that mean? One of the key components of each year's budget ordinance is the commission establishing the tax rate for that year, and it is done annually. However, this is a reappraisal year in Hamilton County. It's every 4th year. In accordance with Tennessee statute, the Hamilton County Assessor of Property is currently sending out reappraisals to Hamilton County residents. They've all been sent out, but there is a period of appeal, and we're in that period now, so it's not a settled issue. The notifications have been made, but the assessor's office is doing a lot of work right now. Following that process, we expect to be notified of the City of Red Bank's new tax rate sometime in the coming weeks or months. So we're just in that limbo period where the appraisals have gone out, reappraisals have gone out, most everybody knows, but we formally as a city, it'll come as a memo, presumably to the mayor or the commission or the city manager. I'm not sure how we'll get it, but we'll all know it when we get it. And it will say our new tax rate. While we await notification of our new tax rate, the current rate of 167 will be used in the budget process. Now, if you apply 167 to the new numbers, you get massively high tax. That is not going to be the new number, but we don't know what the number is, and there's no sense in guessing. So we're just going to leave the 167 where it is, knowing that when we are notified of what that new rate is, the commission will take action informed by the reappraisal process.
And that's the typical process.
Yes.
Correct.
It will be noted that it's an interim tax rate. that
Okay.
We are not approving.
Adopted.
Okay, thank you.
May I?
Yes.
For the purposes of people this is not their 4th or more budget, can you elaborate when you say this is our new tax rate?
What the certified tax rate is.
Yeah, can you
What you're talking about.
elaborate on the certified tax rate a little bit?
I can. So each year, as a part of the budget process, every local jurisdiction establishes its property tax rate. So City of Red Bank, Commission, Chattanooga, Hamilton County, they all, as part of their budget process, adopt a property tax rate. And we will do the same this year. It will be that interim rate of 167 because that's what the commission established it at. It is the commission's discretion to put it at a different level. But what is going to happen in this reappraisal year is the assessor of property will calculate, in accordance with Tennessee statutes, a revenue neutral budget rate. So our property taxes yielded about $5.1 million. And that was at the assessment of $1.67 and our former property values. So as the property values go up, the assessment will drop down so that the new property assessment and the new tax rate still generates the same $5.1 million. So the raw dollars we got in FY25 of 5.1 million, according to the Tennessee statutes, it still yields, the new assessment and the new tax rate still yields a revenue neutral $5.1 million. And we don't know what that new tax rate will be because the assessor of property is really the only entity that knows the totality of the reassessed value of the city of Red Bank. So they have to know that, they have to determine that total reassessed value for the whole jurisdiction. Then they do the math of, we got 5.1 million last year, they need 5.1 million this year, what's that tax rate? It's going to be significantly lower than $1.67, but I don't know really what it's going to be. Somebody was asking me to guess, and I don't know. It's going to be well below 167.
Well, we don't know what the total adjustment is for City of Red Bank specific properties.
Right.
I think
Correct.
we have an idea for all of Hamilton County at this point.
Well, we have not been notified of anything, so I'm sure those numbers are out there, but I am waiting for the comptroller, in the memo to, not the comptroller, the assessor of property to
The
actually
official
tell
word.
us.
I've heard the 60% thrown around for
That was
a
what
countywide
Mr.
average.
Haynes was quoted in the newspaper as
Yeah.
saying, yes, across Hamilton
Countywide.
County.
I wouldn't be surprised if Red Bank wasn't higher than the countywide.
I wouldn't either, especially anecdotally, having heard a few of my neighbors relay their
Yeah.
adjustments.
Yeah.
But if we saw at least the average of 60% across Red Bank, then we could easily see similar to what happened the last assessment year, which our property tax rate was dropped by the state from, I think, $1.39 to 99 cents. So I wouldn't be surprised at $1.67 today. I wouldn't be surprised if it dropped under $1 again.
That's not a bad guess. I was thinking the same thing. Yes, thank you, Vice Mayor. Yeah, well, so we're in this limbo where we're just waiting for the official notification, and then the commission will react to that appropriately in the budget process or subsequent to the budget process. Whatever the assessor of property sends us, it's still not the number. The commission has to adopt it. So it isn't the next year's tax rate until this body takes action. But we will get the revenue neutral number from the assessor of property.
Do we know timeline wise if that's expected to come before the conclusion of the budget process or after?
I don't know. I don't know if we have that information. Chris, do you have any sense of that?
I assume it will be after.
That's the assumption that I'm getting from my colleagues.
We'll have a separate action.
It will be a separate
It
action.
was almost 2 months
Mhm.
after last time,
Yep.
and I just spoke with their office yesterday, and they gave no indication of there being any sooner this time.
Thank you.
So that means we'd actually be into the next fiscal year, probably. But we just have to manage the concerns that come from the community, and they're valid concerns that, hey, this tax rate is huge and my property went way up. And
Mhm.
we have a canned statement we're sharing with everybody that we'll do our best to address those concerns as they come up. Mission, vision, and goals, always good to remind ourselves. From the recent planning retreat, the city of Red Bank is a safe and thriving small town community with an engaging, transparent government that builds on our rich history, provides excellent and efficient services, and welcomes all. We keep that in the back of our mind as staff as we build our budgets. Vision, Red Bank strives for a vibrant, growing, and inclusive community by pursuing excellence, enhancing safety, celebrating our neighborhood character, and stewarding our natural landscapes. I think we're all excited for how the vision could be realized through things like the BART study that we heard. Goals, we have 5 specific goals. Develop a new land conversion agreement with Tennessee Department of Environment and Conservation, TDEC, and National Park Services, and Mayor Dalton is the champion for that one. And next commission meeting, we will identify staff champions that partner up. Create priorities for safe streets, curtailing speeding, enhancing pedestrian walkability, and protected cycling routes, Commissioner Jamie Fairbanks Harvey. And again, I'm reminded of our earlier briefing from Barge. Launch strategic economic development efforts to attract investment, support local businesses, and strengthen community and prosperity. Commissioner Terry Holmes. Implementation of the Parks Master Plan, Commissioner Hayes Wilkinson. Low-cost activation of city property by making improvements, i.e. tables, gardens, etc. Vice Mayor Oliveri. Some wonky stuff here. This is actually the path we have to walk to get from here to there. I mentioned that we started this conversation internally last month. We really began the public phase of it tonight. We have the 2 workshops, which I mentioned. And citizens who attend both of them will get the coveted budget academy certificate. And they had 4 last year, and we love them all. They'll be recognized at first reading. The city charter requires that I present to the commission a budget estimate, and I will do that next Tuesday, well ahead of the 15 May deadline established in our charter. The budget process also sets the property tax rate, and as we've discussed earlier, in accordance with Tennessee statute, this being a reappraisal year, and the timing of that reappraisal process being independent of the budget process, a separate ordinance may be necessary to establish the property tax rate once the appraisal process has been completed. In Red Bank, any ordinance requires 2 readings. The first reading of the budget ordinance is scheduled for 20 May. The second reading of the budget ordinance is scheduled for 3 June. Enactment occurs upon passing at second reading. It becomes the adopted budget and takes effect of 1 July 2025 and continues through 30 June 2026. Important to note that the CFO must file the budget in a very specific comptroller format with the comptroller within 15 days of adoption. Couple of slides for wrap up. Stay informed. Facebook, Instagram, webpage, and I'll particularly commend the webpage under the finance tab. We're really starting to populate that with all the memos from the department directors. Subscribe to our newsletter. Join us at our commission meetings and budget workshops. And lastly, I love to end with this slide. This is the team that's going to get it done. And of course, it's the big departments, it's the city commission, it's all our citizen and voting advisory boards, and I'll call out the lower left. These are agencies and nonprofits and businesses that are license holders and contractors and key partners in really everything we do. The city of Red Bank, being only 82 people, is very small, and those lower left really leverage to meet the needs of the city. So thank you, Mayor, and I'd be glad to answer any questions. Sorry about talking for so long.
Thank you, Mr. Branham. I don't personally have any questions at this moment. Anyone else? That will start next Tuesday.
Oh, excuse me, there was a little bit of a question with the towing in one of the funds.
Impound fund.
The impound.
Yes.
When the Wrecker Service pays for their certificate, or they're in it to be part of, is that part of this, or is that a separate?
It's a separate. That's a
Okay,
separate.
that has nothing to do with impound.
Well, it can occasionally have something to do with, but it's more of a routine thing when we tow a vehicle that's broken down on right away, or there's been an accident and a wreck, and the owner rides off in an ambulance. That record ordinance allows us to just make that procurement decision on the spot, get the trucker, tow truck, and get that out of here. And that really is the empowerment to do that real time.
Okay. And then the owner of the vehicle takes it up with the towing company themselves.
Yes, ma'am. And it's in accordance with the rates that we've established. So
Right.
there's some protection for them, and they're not going to get, it's not going to get sucked to them.
Right.
Correct. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Branham. All right, moving on to item number 4, authorization to apply for the diabetes grant for an amount of up to $150,000 per year for 3 years. Resolution number 25 1786. Mr. Graby.
Thank you, Mayor Dalton, and good evening, Commission. I hope you're all doing well and surviving pollen apocalypse. I appreciate you guys giving me the time to speak in front of you today about Project Diabetes. I came at a previous work session to speak about the letter of intent that we submitted, which was accepted by the Tennessee Department of Health, and they invited us to apply for Project Diabetes, which is up to a 3-year grant, and it cycles every 3 years. This grant is non-matching, and it is a month-by-month reimbursement. So what that would mean is that as we spend each month, that if accepted, then we would be able to submit what our spending is, and we would then get reimbursed, which would be a lot of involvement with Ms. Pickle over here. So with that being said, we are going after the 3-year grant funding for up to $150,000 each year. And so what that's going to look like is going for the Godsey Ridge Trail System. So for those who might not be familiar back home, Godsey Ridge is the ridge line that kind of separates Corridor J from the Red Bank High School, Middle School area, as well as our community center and pool, which a little history back in 1971, the city of Red Bank actually looked to do a trail system up in that ridge, along with their ball fields and what is now the community center. It eventually got axed from that particular project, but this is not a new idea, just breathing life back into it. So with this funding, yes.
For newbies, can you give another name for Corridor J?
Yes, for Highway 27. Thank you. I always get 24 and 27 mixed up. Over there at Highway 27. So this would allow us to do an phased project, to do first year, completely do all of the Godsey Ridge Trail System, which would be 3 trails leading up to about 1.5 miles, including several different loops. It would come with the signage, the wayfinding, the kiosks, the benches, the bridge, the rock shields, and all the things that go into keeping a trail erosion free and help it with less maintenance. All of this was provided by a professional trail designer, Valerie Naylor, through TPL. So a big thank you to Trust for Public Lands for giving us pretty much a shovel-ready project, making us more competitive in the grant world. The second year of funding would be to expand the parking lot at the community center, and to also put in a sidewalk that would parallel the existing trail system, including crosswalks and flashing beacons from the trail to the community center, which would also create another usable ADA accessible trail to the trail system, adding another loop and making it very programmable for our active older adults as well, and for anybody else that wants to use that space. And then for phase 3, which would be the third and final year, it would be to do more sidewalk connectivity on Morrison Springs, adding another crosswalk, and then also finishing out with doing 16 curb cuts up to ADA standards on Morrison Springs to create connectivity and safe bikeable passage on Morrison Springs from the Red Bank City Park and our neighbors over in that area. So really, first year is getting the trail system done. The second is buffing up the amenities at the local site. And then the third is making it more accessible to the community at large to be able to walk or bike to this amenity. And our ultimate goal is once the Bicycle Boulevard is complete, this would be a destination from Stringer's Ridge all the way to Godsey Ridge.
Incredible.
The application deadline is on April 25th, next Friday at 2 p.m. And then they will announce the awards on May 16th. We would be able to then, if awarded, start on July 1st, getting out RFPs for bids on the construction and start moving forward with this project.
So you just need us to vote on this today so you can apply by next Friday?
Correct.
Okay.
And I've obviously already gotten the application all prepped and together. So with your approval, we'll probably be submitting it early next week.
Excellent. Wonderful. Any questions for Mr. Gravy?
Just board to,
Yeah.
that'll help a lot of residents.
If anybody is curious, I have uploaded the trail design plan. It's a 14-page document on the Parks and Rec page of the website under the Parks and Rec Master Plan tab, which now has our Parks and Rec Master Plan that was adopted on August 6th by this commission. And then there is the Parks and Rec Master Plan goals, which is a 2-pager going over the short, the mid, and the long term. And then under that is the Valerie Naylor trail plan design.
Thank you.
I just want to say well done to Parks and Recreation and Public Works for being poised and ready to apply for a grant like this on such short timeline. Bravo.
Yes,
Thank you.
we're appreciative. Thank you. All right, thank you, Mr. Gravy. Next item, authorization to apply and to participate in the Bulletproof Vest Grant for the Police Department in a refundable amount of $10,800. Resolution number 25-1787. Chief Seymour.
Good evening.
Good evening.
So this is a grant we apply for every 2 years that we get. So we have to purchase bulletproof vests for the officers, right? And so this is a grant that is offered federal funds. It's a matching grant, 50-50. So we have to spend the funds anyway to buy the vests. So this grant just allows us to recoup 50% of that. So it is a reimbursement. So we purchase the vests and then, apply for the reimbursement. So our current grant is expiring. This grant is for 2 years. And we have to give them an estimate of how many vests we think that we'll need in that. And I know next year, in about a year, we have like 10 or so vests that will be expiring at that point. So there's about 18 that we've included in that. So
Is this for reimbursement in the next fiscal year? Is that when
it
that
covers the
happens?
next two
Two fiscal years. Okay.
This grant is for 2 fiscal years.
Okay. All right. It's so great that they reimburse at least 50%.
So this is to apply and to accept it if they.
Okay.
I think,
Is it a non-competitive grant or?
pretty much.
Pretty much. I noticed that it said particular preferences given to communities that have less than 100,000 residents. So that's definitely us.
Yes, that's true.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Any questions for Chief? Okay, moving on to your next item, Chief. Agreement with RJ Young to purchase and replace up to 20 computers that have reached end of life. Resolution number 25-1788.
Well, as y'all know, we have been spending a lot of time with our digital transformation and technology and improvements. So one of the things that's occurring is Windows 11, Microsoft is forcing all computers to move to Windows 11. So we have a lot of computers that are not capable of upgrading to Windows 11. And so support for that ends this fall. With that means they stop putting out updates and security protocols and all that to help support those versions. So with that, we've identified about 18 to 19 computers that need to be replaced. That's why we kind of have it built in of an approximate number. The bid, the quote we got was for around $28,000 from RJ Young to replace up to about that. But so I was talking to them, there's a little price fluctuating on that. And so I basically am asking for approval for up to about $35,000 to allow for any of that. So I don't have to come back before you and say, hey, I'm sorry, we're $1,000 or $2,000 over. But this is to replace those. We are planning on using ARPA funds for that purchase as well. So
When do you plan to make that purchase?
as soon as the resolution's signed.
Oh, okay. Okay. I didn't know if we were going to wait until the fall until we had to.
No,
Okay.
we went ahead and decided because we still have another project that we're also working on, and we don't want to. Yes, we want to go ahead and get that done. So we'll be doing that. And this is more ARPA funds, so it really doesn't affect the general fund. So
Right.
Depending on when we do the purchase, it might have to go to the next fiscal year anyway. But it's the ARPA funds as far as the purchase order and all that on how we do that. We might be able to get it done before July, at least the purchase of it. So we'll see.
I have a question, please. When's the last time the computers were upgraded? And how
Well-
long do they last?
Well, the computers are bought at different times,
Okay.
right? And so each department historically has just purchased the computers when they need to be. And so these actually weren't all ordered at the same time. These vary from about 2 to 3 years ago up to maybe 5 to 6 years ago. I've known computers to last about 7 years, but the reality is if we're using them every day, as most workers are, I think 4 to 5 years is really good if you get the life out of it, especially 5 years. So a lot of these are that age, but there are some that are 2 or 3, but we won't be able to use them.
And it depends on if they're capable of upgrading, not
Correct.
necessarily the computer itself, but
Right.
the capability of upgrading.
Well, the software, the type
Yeah.
of computer, right, correct.
Okay.
So there's a lot of them that aren't, so.
Would
And there's a lot that are, so I mean,
Yeah.
that still need to be.
would we be disposing of some of those as surplus to kind of recoup maybe some of that, or just don't know?
We typically can, I think, we typically take the hard drives out of those, to
Okay.
remove those and
Yeah.
to make those safe and not just destroy the
Sure.
laptops, right, for the information that may or may not be on them, but,
Mhm.
to be safe on that. So we typically just destroy the computers.
Gotcha. Okay.
If there are things or parts of it, and we have discussed about recycling those,
Mhm.
at least recycling, if there's something we can do with that instead of just throwing them out in the dumpster.
Right. Okay.
So, yes.
Great.
Is there any software that will be affected by the transition from 10 to 11?
Who knows? It's Microsoft. So, from the police department side, no, not that I'm aware of, because we do have some, probably each department here have a few that are running Windows 11 on them. So we have some that are running Windows 11 in the police department. We don't have any issues with those.
Okay.
I don't know if anybody else is working Windows 11 or not, but there's a few here or there.
As long as iWork is
You
compatible.
never know. It's
Yeah.
well, anyway.
Don't put that into existence. Yes. Okay. Thank you, Chief. Appreciate it. Any other questions for Chief? Nope. Okay. Thank you so much. We will have to table the remaining items for citizen comments on items on the work session agenda. Mr. Granum?
Thank you, Mayor. This is the time for citizen comments. Please observe these rules. Comments are limited to 2 minutes here in work session or less, and the city recorder will operate a timer. Please respect her direction and conclude any comments if time expires. Comments should be addressed to the board as a whole and not to a particular commissioner, the city staff, or to the audience. The commission is here to listen, not to respond or engage in back and forth, so please do not expect a reply during citizen comment. At this time, citizens are invited to the podium. Please begin by stating your name and address.
Hello, my name is Chad Bullard, 3901 Knollwood Drive.
I'm sorry. What you mean?
Chad Bullard, CHAD-BULLARD. I first want to say thank you all for being here, for the time afforded to us to speak, and getting right to it. I know that regarding the right sizing study that was talked about earlier, safety is at the top of the list. Community culture and business, of course, are weighed in there to some degree as well. I just wanted to make 2 specific points since we are at the very beginning of the journey. One is to take this opportunity to enhance access to businesses beyond just parking lots and driving. That I think would be a huge consideration and something that's been spoken about at least a little bit for some of the redevelopment of the commercial pieces that are right along Dayton Boulevard. This could be the perfect time to consider that. And also, and I know that there are several people having discussed with a group of people in the community that really want to make sure that, especially with the possible safe crossing islands that may or may not increase or change, that current activities and city personality, such as the Jubilee and other road-related activities, are highly considered so that we do not lose those opportunities in the future, especially for going to such large, to the tighter space, that kind of fun and community development is not lost. Lastly, regarding the budget workshop and assessment, and also somewhat as a tongue-in-cheek comment, it sounds like our tax rates could be going back to historic lows again. So that's all I have. And I appreciate, once again, the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Bullard. Any other citizen comments on items on this work session agenda? Okay. If not, do we have any other business to discuss? Nope. Okay, if not, we'll go ahead and adjourn and return at 6 o'clock for a regular meeting.
Okay, great.